why we wrote that philosophy, what we call our philosophy of land use. We have to know a little bit about our history as a community. When the sisters came here in the early 1900s, they were told by the local people that if you want to make a go of it here on the prairie, you need to own land. That's very, very important. And they very methodically set about buying up land. They were donated a small piece of land, but all the rest of it they bought. And through the years, we've become very, very attached to that land and very committed to it. The land consisted of pasture land where they grazed cattle. It consisted of gardens and orchards where they grew much of the food that they ate. And it consisted of farmland that first the sisters themselves farmed, but eventually leased out. But most of the land was forest land, where they grazed cattle and also got their firewood and their fence posts and those sorts of things. So that's how they got the land. Now, but through the years, it was just there. And so the sisters used it as they saw fit, but we never really looked at it carefully and said, what do we want to do with this land? And then in 1991, as a community, we decided we needed to do something more methodical with our property. And so I was asked to start a stewardship of the land committee. And one of the first things we realized is that as a community, we had to agree on what this meant to us, that this property was our responsibility. And so we started out by writing this philosophy of land use. And being the community we are, we don't jump into anything very quickly. We spent 3 years. We would work on it. We would write it up as a committee, then take it to the rest of the community. They'd tear it apart. We'd take it back and start all over again. And then the next year when we met as a community, they'd tear it apart again and we'd start all over. Until in 1993, we came to an agreement that this is really what we believe about our land. It's different than a management plan. A management plan tells you how and what you're going to do with your land. A philosophy that we wrote, it answers the question why. Why do you own this land? What does it mean to you? So it gets to the meaning question rather than the what are you going to do question. Well, we begin the philosophy of land use by talking about how we are living in connection with, in harmony with this land, and how our community's history is very intimately connected with this piece of property. And also how we recognize that we are simply stewards of, we are responsible for this land. You really can't own land as such, but you can be responsible for it. And so it's a commitment then to listen very carefully to the land and try to understand what it is that we should be doing in harmony with the land, in connection with the land, to keep that land vital and healthy and productive. Even to the point where we realized that the stones from this building came from our land. And also that ultimately our bodies get returned to this land when we die. And so our connection with the land is that intimate. And so that's the basis of our philosophy, is our agreement and conviction that that's our connection with, our living with a part of this land. What happens to this land happens to us. We can't disconnect ourselves from it. So this leads then to the second part of it. If this is our conviction, then how do we express that? How do we show this reverence, this care for our land? And we enumerated a number of things. One is that our very lifestyle should be lived in a way that witnesses to the love of the earth. The way we live, the way we purchase, the way we treat the earth. And then to join with others who are working together to protect the earth. There are many, many organizations out there and people who have made a commitment to this very same thing. And we want to join with them, work together with them. Which means then we need to be educated. We need to do our own self-education. We understand that we need to use the land for financial profit. I always say the land has to carry its own weight. But it's not there just for our financial profit, but that is a part of it. And then to keep in mind that what we have here, and this is what many people who come for retreats tell us, we have a very gift of this land which provides peace, a place for reflection, prayerfulness, and our commitment is to keep it that way so that we can share it then with other people who are also looking for a place where they can touch God through nature. So that's kind of the basis of what our philosophy of land use says. Well, I think I was kind of surprised. This document took on a life of its own. Many times we write, a group can write a document, and the important part of the document is in the process of the writing it, because once you have it written, it kind of gets filed away, and maybe years later somebody pulls it out and says, oh, hey, look, something we wrote. But this particular document didn't become that. It became a very living, useful document. It's a guideline, and so whenever we make decisions about our property, whether that's as simple as how we till the garden to how we log in our woods, whatever we do, or sharing it with other groups, it flows. We go back and look and say, does it flow out of this document? Does it witness to what we said we would do? And so it became a guideline for us as a community. And the Stewardship of the Land Committee, we refer to it periodically too, to just say, okay, the things we're talking about, the things we want to do, are those consistent with what we said in our philosophy? But then I discovered that other people were very interested in it. In fact, I was asked to give a couple of different times a presentation on this philosophy, how we wrote it, what we wrote, why we wrote it, and I gave out copies of it, and I would get requests from all over the United States for a copy of our philosophy. It intrigued other people that a group such as us, we sat down and together and agreed what it was we believed about the very fact that we had this land, that we were responsible for this land. And so I used it for presentations, gave it out. Several magazines, newspapers have included it, ecological magazines, in their articles and what they wrote. And I encouraged other people to also write I said, obviously it doesn't have to look like ours, because ours is going to be unique to us. But especially if you own land as a family or as a group, and this is what's happening more and more, is you have this couple who own a farmland, forest land, and as they're getting older, they're thinking about, okay, this is going to get passed on to our children. Well, the children have multiplied in the meantime, and you've got grandchildren, and you've got in-laws, and you've got an extended family. And everybody comes with a little different idea of what this land is about and why we should be taking care of it. And so I just encourage them that even as a family or as a group, make yourself get together and articulate what it is that you really believe about this fact that you own land and that you can agree on. Because you may discover that there are many things you really don't agree on. What is the purpose of this land? Some people want their land to be only for the animals and for the trees. Others say, no, we need to be able to make money from it. We need to be able to cut down trees and make money. And some will say, well, we need to be able to sell it then for development. So you need to understand together and agree together what it is. So one of the little things that I thought was very interesting, I work a lot with professional foresters, and they've always been impressed with this because many of them, this is the basis, these ideas, not exactly what we wrote, but this basic idea is why they became foresters, because they believed in the integrity and the beauty of the forest and wanted to learn how we could live in harmony with and interact with the forest and not destroy it, but help it be more healthy and vital. And I had one professional forester who worked for the extension at the University of Idaho, and he told me one day, he said, I keep a copy of your philosophy right by my computer so that I am constantly reminded of why I became a forester, so I don't get caught up in all of the other stuff and forget the basis for why I became a forester. So I was always very pleased that somehow, like I said, our philosophy of land use just took a life of its own and went out there and inspired and helped other people look at their own land and understand why they believed it was important to take care of it.